raining outside, the mood is set. Today we're going to talk about a very intimate topic, and that's what you need to do in order to be a better street fighter and not get your ass handed to you on the street. Let's dive in. Tip number one is going to be to do your strength training. If you take an average Joe that doesn't work out and take a guy that does work out, the guy that does work out is going to win every time. Or if you want, you could take a guy that runs 6 miles every day to a guy that does his push-ups and his pull-ups. The guy that does his push-ups and his pull-ups is way more likely to win that fight, and that's talking no combat experience prior. So take yourself with no strength training and take yourself with strength training. When you do strength training, you're more likely to win the fight. There's a lot of factors at play in street fighting, and strength training is going to help with just about every one of those factors. Pushing, the shoving, the punching, right? The explosiveness that you're going to need. Strength training will help you in just about every aspect of the physicality that it takes to participate in a street fight. That rain's really loud. Now, in terms of the types of strength training to do, if you're not competing in professional combat sports, then for street fighting, it's going to be a mix between powerlifting and a boatload of calisthenics. Powerlifting, of course, gives you that good shoving and pickup strength that you can use to boom your opponents onto the ground, and calisthenics will give you more of that ape-like explosive strength that you can use to hold off a takedown or explode on their chin. My personal recommendation is to read a book called Solitary Fitness by Charles Bronson, and go do some more research on Charles Bronson. He's one of the scariest guys to ever live. He's one of the most expensive prisoners that Great Britain has ever had, and he's worth looking into. So check out that book. I left it in the description below. The next tip is going to be to train in combat sports. If there's nothing else that you do in order to be a better street fighter, this is the best thing that you could do. If we go back to an earlier example of an average Joe versus a guy that strength trains, the guy that strength trains is most likely going to win. But if we go to an example of a guy that just strength trains to a guy that just does combat sports, the guy that does combat sports is definitely going to win. The best combat sports are going to be a combination of striking and grappling. So you could do something like boxing and wrestling, or Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. A lot of people frown on Jiu-Jitsu on the street, but there's no ref to separate you when somebody taps, right? You could literally break somebody's arm or worse, end somebody's life with Jiu-Jitsu. So it's a very dangerous sport when applied on the street. However, if you're more offensive-minded and more group-minded, like thinking that you might get jumped and you want to be ready for a situation like that, Jiu-Jitsu might not be the best bet. I personally recommend boxing and wrestling as the two best sports to know for a street fight. This is because they're the two most explosive martial arts out there. It really can help you in a group situation to take guys out, maybe do a couple hip tosses on a couple guys and really get rid of them in a fast manner. If you're going to be prepping for the street, learn boxing, learn wrestling, learn Muay Thai, learn Jiu-Jitsu. Pick one or two of those and practice them. Even if you just practice a few days a week, it'll help separate you from the pack of the average people out there that don't know how to fight at all. And street fighting is not exactly like competitive fighting, but the speed, the power, the techniques, and defensive techniques that you learn in combat sports will 100% translate into the street. If you're not competitively fighting in the professional environment, then I 100% recommend that you put on size. Eat more, train more, and put on some size. Size is definitely advantageous on the street, whether that's shoving guys around or punching guys. What I like to do is compare myself, right? I take the smaller version of me to the bigger version of me and try to find that perfect medium that would win in the street fight. You don't want to get too big that you become slow and sluggish and off balance, but you don't want to be on the smaller end either. You want to be somewhere in the middle where you're built with muscle, right? You have that density, you have that mass to put behind your punches and have enough mass to push guys around and be strong in grappling. As the saying goes in boxing, a great little guy always beats a good big guy, but a great big guy always beats a great little guy, right? Size does matter in the street and in fighting. That's why there's weight classes. And the problem is there's no weight classes on the street, so you want to be on the higher end of those weight classes when it comes to fight time. Of course, the best way to put on mass is to push the ground and eat your food, right? Do your strength training and eat good quality foods in large quantities. The next tip is to condition your knuckles. You need strong knuckles on the street. It's very easy to hurt your hand in the street fight. So what you want to do is build that density in those knuckles, so not only are your punches harder to your opponent, but also you prevent injury when fighting. The best way to do that is something called Wolff's Law, which means the more trauma you put on your bones, the stronger they will get. And you can do that in a very simple fashion on the heavy bag. Basically, come up to the heavy bag and hit it with no gloves on, right? So you're just gonna punch that bag, right? And over time, your hands will get much harder and harder the more you do that. So hit the bag with no gloves on. If your skin starts to tear, you want to build your skin strength up too. So what you want to do is wrap your hands before you hit that bag, and for a few rounds a day, just hit the bag with no gloves on. Make sure you start slow. That way you're not hurting your hand and not creating any permanent damage. And build that strength up in your knuckles. Another thing you can do is knuckle push-ups. 100% will help you with strengthening the skin and the bones on your knuckles. And the last tip is always punch first. There's no reason to try to have mercy on your opponent and wait to get hit, because all you're doing is putting your life in danger. You may have an honor code that you follow, but those honor codes only work when everybody follows them, right? It's like the mob. The reason the mob fell apart is because guys started snitching. Not everybody was following the code. Same thing on the street. You may know that when you knock a guy out, you're gonna stop and just go home and let him live, but your opponent may not have the same level of compassion, and they may give you lifelong injuries in the fight if you let him hit you first. So it's better that the guy with some moral compass actually win the fight, and that should be you. So the rule is, as soon as somebody's within arm's reach, punch, right? If somebody's trying to get within your physical space, it's gonna turn into a physical conversation. So as soon as somebody's within your arm's reach, let those things fly, and as soon as your opponent is out, make sure you stop and go home. So always punch first. There's no room for mercy when your life is on the line. So that's it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Those are a few tips to be a better street fighter. Let me know in the comment section below which one of these tips resonated with you the most. And as I always say in these videos, use street fighting only as a form of self-defense. Don't go out there picking fights. It's dangerous for you, it's dangerous for your opponent, and it's honestly not worth it. When you can, diffuse the situation and leave. Street fighting is a very ape-like behavior in the first place, right? A lot of it has to do with just ego. So let your ego out the way. If there's no physical threat to anybody around you or yourself, then there's no reason to fight. Other than that, I'm Sean Brawl Brothers, and I'll brawl with you guys next time.